Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security. The Cognitive Crucible is a forum that presents different perspectives and emerging thought leadership related to the information environment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of or endorsement by the Information Professionals Association.
My guest today on the Cognitive Crucible is Dr. Sean Guillory, who is a nationally recognized expert in cognitive warfare, influence operations, and behavioral strategy. Sean is the co-founder and CEO of Bet Breaking News, link in the show notes, which leverages prediction market intelligence to drive actionable decisions for corporate and national security clients. He is also the co-host of the Mad Warfare podcast, where he explores the nuances of unconventional conflict. Additionally, Sean serves on the boards of the Information Professionals Association and the Mind Science Foundation's Science Committee, fostering the research and practical applications necessary to protect the modern cognitive landscape. Sean Guillory, welcome back to the Cognitive Crucible.
Fantastic being back.
Yeah, well, link in the show notes, but Sean was last on the podcast way back up at the top, episode number 65 in October of 2021 on cognitive neuroscience applications. So people can go check that out as well if they like what they hear and they just got to have some more Guillory. They can check that out. But so the conversation I'd like to have with you today, Sean, will cover betting intelligence and national security. But before we get into this topic, can we start by getting your assessment of our strategic landscape, or if you prefer, the times in which we live?
Strategic landscape. I may be able to answer kind of like a little of both, but I'll try to do it quickly. In terms of strategic landscape, which I'm guessing the question is more in terms of like a national security kind of posturing. Still to this day, again, the U.S. is the most advanced military intelligence architecture in history. In terms of those kind of like kinetic, even kind of like a lot of the cyber aspects, absolutely amazing. But the thing that, again, like the U.S. is, not kind of prepared for. I mean, even for like years, like when I was on this episode, the original episode, all the way what we talked about on the Mad Warfare podcast, but we always at least talked about like some of these kind of like non-kinetic aspects around like information and the cognitive and even some of the cyber aspects that maybe isn't necessarily being accounted for, and those could be seen as blind spots. This kind of hyper focus that I've been having with these prediction markets and these betting markets, which actually started about 3 years ago. I worked on a pilot looking at betting markets and their potential for collective kind of humans, like human intelligence aspect. And at least at that time, it was kind of good insights and good kind of people and network. I gained from that, but it was seen at the time as being too early. The scale wasn't there. Fast forward to today, where Kalshi and Polymarket are both worth $10 billion. You're seeing them everywhere. You're seeing them on South Park episodes. You're seeing them at award shows where you can bet on everything. And we're also seeing these kind of first stories of these insiders who have either privileged and in some cases classified information that they are using to get the advantage on certain bets and make money from that because they know when these attacks are happening. But because of how they bet and how much money they put out there, now a lot of people know when certain attacks are happening. And so again, just in terms of people being, aware of these attacks that they probably shouldn't be aware of, that's going to be dangerous for, our folks and our soldiers. And again, like some of that, like who it's actually coming from, who is doing this. It's not impossible to find, but it's something where that kind of advanced military architecture that I talked about for the U.S., we're not prepared where the attack could be from anybody and the target could be anything. That's just not something that we're prepared, because it could absolutely come from the inside. It could come from outside. It could be somebody that they overheard you say something, or they hacked and they found your stuff. It really could come from anywhere. And that's the kind of thing where it was enough to make me just focus in on this company, and make sure that national security folks know more about this issue, because this is something. Let's see if you'll take the bait, John. I think even above AI, I would say that these betting markets and these prediction markets are the biggest threat landscape that we're seeing in the immediate future.
Okay, well, I will.
That's the bait. I say, you ain't gonna take it.
That's definitely the bait. So I want to put a pin in that. But I think, well, first of all, what I got from what you just said seems to be a really common theme today, is that there are a whole bunch of the surface area, the problem space surface area is just unbelievably vast and complicated. By the time this episode comes out, we will have had a previous episode with Doug Abdeel talking about drone related stuff, but operating in GPS denied environments,
Gotcha.
which is something that is like a live problem on the Ukrainian battlefield. But between that, IPA just recently hosted a conference in Northern Virginia, all on cognitive warfare. Anyway, the themes are, we are at extreme risk for attack vectors and problems that are, just it just wasn't possible, as little as 10 years ago, let alone 20 or 30 years ago or longer. So it's just a major problem. So I guess I would say, you surfacing this now as a, like a live but growing problem is something that I think people should sit up and pay attention to. So I look forward to you making the case. But why don't we, start at, like a real kind of like a 101 kind of a level, so that a, smart high schooler can understand, what are betting markets.
Got it. So I think when a lot of folks think in terms of betting, and these are still out there in terms of these fixed odds kind of betting companies, the traditional, like, here are the odds that we are offering. These odds could change depending on what the information the bookies get. You put down your money, and once that money's in there, you need to wait until the results happen. There's no taking your money out whatsoever. These betting markets, and I call them betting markets because they were called betting markets if you go to companies like Betfair and Smarkets in the UK, and these kind of aspects, even before they were called prediction markets, they were considered betting. And these kind of things in terms of the US considering them trading, I'll table that right now, but there is this camp out there. I think it's to more of a legal loophole kind of maneuver, but they do not consider this betting, and they'll talk about prediction markets as trading and something more anomalous to a binary stock market. But how these things work, which again, I'm going to continue to use the term betting market, the odds are something that are seen as a percentage of what something will happen or not. So it's some number between 0 and 100 on a certain question. And whatever that number is, if it's 33%, you can put money in on that. Actually, I should make the math a little bit easier. Let's say you're coming in at 10% that something's going to happen, and you think, yes, it will happen. Okay, so you bought in at 10, and you're just waiting for the event to happen. But during that time, that price will go up and down. It could go up to 40, it could go down to 4%, it could be anything. And during that time, if there are takers on the other side who want your yes bet that it will happen, which yes, when it does happen, it will strike at 100%. If it's no, it will go to 0% when the eventuality kind of happens that you're betting on. But say you bought in at 10% and right now it's sitting at 30%. If you can find a taker on the other side, you can cash out and make 3x your money. So it's something where even before the bet has resolved, you can buy and sell your position, be it yes or no that it's going to happen at any sort of price. It does have to depend if there's somebody on the other side that's willing to take it. So liquidity is an issue.
Is it how is it similar to and different from basic stock market trading?
In terms of, there are these binary markets, as in, will something happen, yes or no? It's not different at all from those. But
well,
in terms of
would it be most, sorry to interrupt, would it be most similar to the stock market when you're thinking about I'm losing the term. What is it where you bet you short and long positions?
You could short and long. More of them are having these leveraged sort of options. Not too many of them do right now. Again, that ends up being a how much money on these markets and liquidity kind of issue. But yes, you could short and long, but also to compare it to stocks and bonds. So again, I think the mechanisms in comparing it to the binary yes or no, again, the kind of stock market that we think of where it can go up and up and up and up, these things can't go past 100% that this is going to happen. So there is a ceiling and there is a floor. So that's a binary market. The other aspect is if you buy yes that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are going to get married, you don't really own anything. Like in the stock, you actually now own a part of the company. Those kind of aspects, you don't really own anything. As soon as it resolves, you have nothing except for your winnings or what you lost. So I think this kind of comparison
is it
the stock market and that
would it be more comparable than to like horse betting, race betting, where I'm betting that this horse is going to win, or that's a binary, and during the middle of the race, or it might be a real long shot horse, like this horse is never going to win, but if all 7 other horses break their legs during the middle of the race, then there you go, this one won. Is it more analogous to that kind of betting?
I wish my co-founder Gary, who really cut his teeth on the horse racing market, was here to kind of answer that. So I'm going to try my best to be very pointed, because I know I can even go down the rabbit hole of this. There's an analogous to horse racing, at least. Let's say like who will get elected markets, and before you know it's 2 people. So right now, if you look who's going to either win or be the party candidate for a presidential election, there's a lot of ponies right now in terms of like who you can go for right now. That's when it would make it a little bit more analogous.
Sure.
With horse racing, unless this has changed, when the horses start or when they stop taking bets, you can't do bets while the horses are racing. In horse racing, if that has changed, where they allow this kind of prop betting while the racing is happening, I'm not abreast on that. Versus with prediction markets, this gets closer to, and when I say prop betting or propositional betting, that's the kind of betting on, will this player make a free throw in the next 10 minutes sort of thing. So there are these bets that you can take during a game until the game is over. So that's similar to what you can see in prediction markets and that kind of prop betting. You do see that in other sports. Like, okay, are they actually going to make first down on this drive or not? What's
Wow.
the coin toss going to be? Yeah, there's even bets like
Wow.
that in sports betting. And that's something similar that you're going to see in terms of kinds of questions. And then the aspect that while the game is still going on, the odds are going to go up and down, and you can
Mm.
cash in or cash out whenever you
Wow.
can if there is somebody on the other side. So that's a
Wow.
little bit different than horse racing that I know of. So yeah,
Well, I don't want to go down I mean, there's all kinds of rabbit holes to go down, but I want to, kind of get back on track. But I was
Mhm.
just thinking about, these platforms, like
Mhm.
what's the Polymarket is one of the
Polymarket and
big
Kalshi would be
ones.
the two bigger ones, over $10 billion.
Yeah, yeah, but these platforms have to somehow algorithmically keep track of like when a market or when a bet is viable or allowable or not, right? Because during a game, during
Hmm.
this, I mean, and so there's hundreds of thousands of these things active at any given time, right? So they have to, like, for the Super Bowl is an easy example,
Hmm.
but somehow they have to keep track of this event which is happening, and when the event, the Super Bowl, concludes, well, then that market is now closed. You can't keep on betting and racking up wins after the game is over. So
You would think, right?
somehow they have to algorithmically identify, okay, this game is over, this horse race is over, this election is over, no more bets or no more interaction. And how do they do that at scale?
I will. The quick answer, if we're talking specifically with the prediction markets,
Hmm.
um, they are currently not on top of when the bets need to close. So what do I mean by that?
Oh,
I'm going to be
okay.
killing somebody's edge right here in terms of like there is this not school of thought, just people who kind of take advantage of this. Where well, let me take a step back. With most the sports events and especially the Super Bowl, as soon as that was done, I'm sure they closed that immediately. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't think there was any stragglers in that. But these kind of markets on what Caroline Levitt's going to say at this press conference, or like some of these more straggling ones, it's very much a thing that um, they'll try to get like on TV, or you have these folks that are, you may have heard of court siding, but sometimes, like since TV and sometimes even radio broadcast is a little bit slower than like actually being at the game, some folks will just be there to try to get that advantage. Like, okay, I see exactly what happened. Let me get money before everybody else realizes it. There's sometimes a slowness in closing out markets, even if something were to happen, maybe it's sitting at about a 96%, and folks will just try to be as fast as they can to get it in before they close it at 100. You're only going to get this like small little 4%, but that kind of small nickel and dime can add up. I can say right now, in terms of a traditional like betting book, they would kick people out, those kind of like bottom feeders, like very
Hmm.
quickly if someone were to try to do that, because
I
it's
see.
kind of like not honoring the, you already knew what happened, and you're just kind of taking advantage of someone being slow on that. But because I've seen that enough time, and there's folks that kind of make at least bread and butter and rent off of knowing what's going to happen and then being quick before they kind of close that
Yeah.
market. I
It's like
know
yeah, yeah,
human currently.
yeah. So much of this like has like an arbitrage aspect to it. But I'd love to have you comment on that. But I think maybe that gets into. But before we do that, um, do you think you could just talk about? So there's this phenomenon or this
Mhm.
new technology or a new way for people to bet in ways that haven't really existed at scale before. Um, what are some other cultural phenomena that are kind of adjacent to all of this that are almost like bedfellows to this technology,
Mhm.
would you say? Cultural or technological bedfellows.
I look at it more in terms of some of the antecedents
Hmm.
where a lot of the times when we talk about information operations, um, we look at things in terms of the motivations that people have, usually some sort of political motivation. And when we talk about more what motivates some of these adversaries and non-state actors, or even just spree killers to do what they do, it's usually this combination of we look in terms of political motivations and then maybe some mixture of like mental health kind of aspect.
Mm.
But there are these things in terms of information operations where very to little no political motivation, and it was all for the money. Like, I don't know if on the show it's been talked about, 2016, even some of the earlier election, you had these folks in like Eastern Europe. Like the most famous case would be like these teens out of Macedonia, where during like political election, including like the 2016 presidential election, they were putting all these disinformation articles out there just to get people to click on it. They don't care about politics whatsoever. It was purely to get folks to kind of do these clicks on that. So you kind of see these things where it's just you see it in crypto all the time to get folks to click, get folks to invest, and then you kind of like rug pull. That's not like nothing personal except for just the profit. You also seen things in terms of the older old tweet like, oh, the White House has been attacked and Obama's hurt, just to kind of crash the stock market so people can quickly short that. So these are things where folks have been using information to kind of, or misinformation, disinformation to profit in of those different ways. And with prediction markets being something that, again, what is motivating these folks, it's either, well, it's information still. I was going to say insider information or what they can get out there publicly. It is absolutely information. What folks believe is what kind of makes the number go up and down, even if they're believing something that's not true. So, what a way to incentivize, not only just incentivize, ladies and gentlemen, again, those measures of effects and measure of performance that we've been looking for in terms of information operations and psyops for years. Unfortunately, a strong candidate would be something like these prediction markets, because you can use the information that kind of like motivates people to bet a certain way, or you put out something and see if people believe it and see if it actually pops the number one way or another. I don't love it, but that is something in of that.
Mm. Hmm.
But again, this kind of aspect where these incentives not only to get folks to put out this kind of information, which we call non-kinetic intervention in our older papers, again, if you're going to share a Substack, but also these kinetic interventions where if folks know a person who is involved in a bet, or you are that person where your decision can have the bet what go one way or the other. Like there was a tweet maybe about 6 months ago from the president of El Salvador about if they're going to invest more into Bitcoin or not. And he tweeted like, I could do the funniest thing while screenshotting a picture of Kalshi on that bet. So these kind of insiders, to kind of further incentivize because they know which direction it's going to go to or not. And you see this in sports, and this is kind of sports in a lot of ways. Sports betting is a canary in the coal mine where people are hounding LeBron or hounding these athletes. Come on, LeBron, just make one more free throw. You're going to help me hit my parlay. That kind of harassing that
Mm.
you're going to see in terms of public officials or folks that are on these bets. You
Oh,
kind of move away from
because it
information
could like
operations and influence operations to what I call
uh,
incentive operations. This is where
like
we're going.
cajoling individuals to do something which might be just like marginal effort for them, like okay, one more free throw or one more whatever, or
Correct.
getting a politician to pull on their earlobe just as a just like make a sign, right? I mean the possibilities are
Come on, Mr.
uh
President, sign
it,
that bill. I just need one more bill.
endless,
And again, I'm going to
endless,
make my
yeah,
rent.
right. Yeah. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Well, I would when I asked you that question, I was kind of thinking that this betting phenomenon is kind of adjacent or in a similar cultural space to what we're also witnessing with respect to the rise of the gaming industry. The like porn. Porn has always been a thing, but like online porn, access to porn, also, some worrisome stuff with young men who don't have good prospects, or whose dating life is non-existent by choice or otherwise. There's cultural stuff with women being having their own careers, their own lives, their own interests. They don't need men in some some the way some people put it, and that affects men. That feeds back into the porn and the incel stuff. But anyway, all of this stuff, I kind of put it in almost a similar kind of a problem space. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any
I
connection?
would say that a lot of the stuff that you see in terms of gaming, and especially like mobile gaming,
Hmm.
that stuff came from the casinos and they use the term gaming too, but I'll just use gambling to kind of like differentiate it. But if you talk to folks in quote unquote the gaming space, sometimes it could be in like casinos and betting. So a little bit in terms of definition for that. But a lot of that's coming from, again, what you see in casinos and the slot machines and the kind of things that, they learn to kind of like keep people there and keep people betting. You do see this now in the gaming where stuff like loot boxes or these gotcha mechanics, and if folks don't know what that is, you're literally putting down money not for a transaction like thank you for this character or thank you for this tool, but just the chance to roll the dice and you maybe get it. And they want you rolling the dice as much as they can and making more money off you.
Hmm.
That came from gambling. Yeah, there's aspects of like dopamine and vice to it. Uh, but yeah, like I
Well,
forgot who said
yeah,
this quote, but I
yeah.
should like thank him. But even in terms of stock market and trading, the folks in the financial sector have taken more from the gambling people than the gambling people have taken from them. So you're just going to
Say,
see what I call hyper gamblification and a lot of these kind of things in the next few years because one, in terms of just kind of like our political climate right now, at least in the United States, allowing for those kind of businesses to prosper. So you're going to see a lot of investment in and of the space that looks a lot like, hey, isn't this gambling? Yeah, because
hmm
there's again like kind of a lot more acceptance of that in terms of
hmm
like extracting money.
Well, there's
And you're
also
just
the instantaneous ification to put to make up a word, but things are becoming increasingly real time with the internet and the exchange of information in ways that
yeah.
haven't been possible before. And uh, I mean, the betting phenomenon, I think, is another advancement towards the real-timeification of life and geopolitics and all kinds of stuff.
And even getting a little bit in terms of the economic, and then we'll quickly get to
Yeah, yeah.
the next point. There's a lot of folks again like out there kind of just struggling financially. And I have this in one of the papers, like the future you can bet on paper that's on our Substack, where okay, would you rather buy a carton of eggs for $4.50 or 50 cents and you could spin the wheel and you could possibly again like get those eggs cheaper? You're
Mm.
seeing a lot more of those kind of mechanics happening in real life. Like even again, like we kind of live in the same area of Texas. There's this Mexican food place that's like near the Riverwalk, where I think every Tuesday you can literally roll a dice, and if you roll a six, then you get your food for free. You're going to be seeing
Mhm.
a lot more of these kind of
Oh,
like
wow.
gamification mechanisms all over the place because, again, they end up extracting more wealth, and for some folks, it's a little bit less until when you start looking at how it piles up.
Yeah.
You're
Huh.
spending a
Yeah.
lot more money.
Yeah, that's cool. Coincidentally, my wife and I just went down to the San Antonio River Walk a
Oh
couple
yeah,
of
yeah,
days
so
ago.
yeah,
I'd been there before as a kid. I always knew it was like a really special place, but wow, it really is a very interesting. The Cognitive Crucible, brought to you by the San Antonio Chamber of
I mean, yeah, like I
Commerce.
said, let's hear, yeah, this treat
Now,
me
a
good enough to give him a shout out.
little advertisement for the San Antonio River Walk. Definitely worth it. Okay, well, national security related stuff. What,
Mhm.
hit me with, your most obvious, challenge or with respect to national security and how this can play into that kind of a problem space. Why should people be sitting up and paying
Yeah,
attention to this?
right now the stuff that's getting all the attention would be um, the insiders who are using either proprietary or their confidential classified information to profit in different ways. So, in terms of looking at insider threat and tracking those sort of things, that's probably on the thing that people are paying attention to the most. You're going to start seeing more of these bets that are almost looking for gossip and looking for folks who kind of divulge this information in order to profit. So you could absolutely, um, you know, will this bombshell or will this kind of information like come out that again like this company may not want. If somebody's like, okay, I'm about to leave this company anyway, I wouldn't mind making a cool, like 400, 500 grand on the way out since I'm not even going to have a job. Boom, let me put that out there
Oh,
and they can
so
deal with that mess.
so
So you're
so
going to see a
that
lot
so
more
someone
Snowden kind of activity that you could profit
mm,
off as well. Yeah.
so
That's not even the biggest one, I think. But
yeah,
yeah,
we were just talking about, like, a basketball player, being cajoled into doing something which would translate into some kind of a winning bet that is already existing. But, like, take a huge company, a multinational company, not going to mention any names, but pick one,
sure.
right? Doesn't matter, healthcare, energy, whatever. But here's a bet that company X is going to have like a major whistleblower
Mm.
event in the next week. Here you go. Put that
Make
out
money
there.
off it. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
Again, it's about balancing how much money you're making, which this is something that's pretty public now. I mean, as public as you can get in terms of Super Bowl, but that Super Bowl streaker, I don't think the previous one, but the one before that, he calculated in terms of, okay, trip to the Super Bowl, ticket for the Super Bowl, how much I'm going to have to pay probably in terms of fine and court fees.
Mm.
Still going out there and streaking and winning that bet was worth it. They made a profit off of that action. So you're going to
Ah.
see that kind of
Oh, this.
profit
Yeah.
maximization for kind of these
My
things. But
my my business development costs are going to be at a minimum $10,000, but
yeah,
I'm still going to do it because I estimate that I'll get 50,000 or whatever.
correct. Like, okay, yeah, well, yeah, plus and minus, I'm still plus. But again, like even to that aspect where that we encourage what we call our stuff like a kinetic action, like stuff physically happening and doing these kind of actions just to win a bet. The kind of logical extreme would be something that would be like a 9/11 or a Pearl Harbor style attack
Mhm.
where the perpetrators could actually profit off of that.
Mm.
Um, in turn, because there's already these like, will this place get attacked now? Will these
Mm.
things in? Folks know it's going to happen, or they make it happen just because it would make them money.
Mhm.
Um, that's when we get to again like it's one of the worst case in terms of like single events I can think of, and I don't want that to
Sure.
happen. So I'm
Sure.
saying it out loud for people to
Mhm.
imagine and then imagineer that not to happen.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, this is one of those problem spaces where it's like, you know, if you don't have a criminal mind, it might be kind of like shrug, what's the big deal? But, I think you're unpacking for us, ways to think about this creatively and criminally, which can really, really be problematic. Let's um, turn to, like, so wrap up here a little bit, but
Hmm.
like what kind of research questions do you think are um, right ripe for this space? If someone, is like, you've got like a student who's going to some sort of course and they want to, advance some knowledge in this space, what do you think the kinds of things are people can take a look at, and what are you and your colleagues looking at?
I guess to help out with research, some of that in terms of if we're talking about like academic research would be the encouraging of appropriators to fund things in this space so the folks can, like do the research and kind of get paid for it like they should. And with that, it's since there isn't a lot of funding out there right now, unless you're self-funding to make your own money on these markets, there isn't a lot of kind of like public, like know-how or whatnot to these kind of mechanisms, of prediction markets, because I think some of the more interesting things that folks are interested in is this aspect of, and because again, I'm going to say it in terms of like cognitive security and information operations. Say you had something in terms of a candidate where somebody totally inflated the number on percentage. Does that lead to any positive feedback loops where people think, oh, this person could actually win? I'm going to do this, either stay at home or I'm going to like get more folks to vote now. That kind of like, does that number kind of influence certain kind of action? Then that action itself influence the number and whatnot. That kind of feedback loop is something that needs to be studied more. Another aspect that, in terms of our space, there's a lot of folks who want to just look at these markets as just forecasting. I think both looking at these numbers as like actuarial truth is both a blunder, and then the aspect of I can figure out what's going to go on purely from forecasting methods alone is also a blunder, because it's different now where you have these incentives where kind of both the higher and the lower the number can get. Because if it's something where, oh, 10% is going to happen, to forecaster, they can see like, no, no, actually I'm doing my forecast. It's for like a 50% chance. To somebody who's just looking to make a buck and they can see like, okay, I can make this operation to make this happen, and I'm going to 10x my money because I'm going to buy a bunch at 10% and I'm going to make this happen. That blows up in the face of a lot of forecasting methods. So you have to have this kind of like incentive and folks who could make these one result or the other happen or not, depending on what the price is. So research, even looking at that kind of incentive based forecasting, needs to be done. But what we've been looking at, and why I encourage a lot of folks, I know we don't have too much time right here. There's so much, I brought up a lot of stuff in terms of negatives and things we need to look after for prediction markets. I actually do think that there's some like positive that this kind of like incentive structure could bring on. Like, I would love to see something where like there's like political promises market or an accountability market where here's the political promises, are they going to fulfill it or not, to kind of track people? Or will this bridge or this infrastructure be done, or things about like crime rate lowering? Like, I'd
Mm.
love these things to be incentivized on that. And the one thing we're looking at is, actually, you talk about science questions, we're looking to see if these betting markets could be helpful in terms of like predicting like science hypotheses, or when these research is going to be done, or what's going to get funded, or where they're going to get published, better than kind of traditional uh, like traditional surveys, or just the traditional science review. So we have a research project that's up on Research Hub right now, which we can include the link. It's up there
Mhm,
until
mhm.
mid March. That if folks are interested in that question, you can fund that. But there's so many, and anybody who is interested, like, reach out, and we'll be as helpful as we can on that.
Yeah, for sure. And links in the show notes to the Bet Breaking News website, the Substack that Sean mentioned as well, that he and his colleagues are contributing to, and that betting reviewed versus peer reviewed research proposal, where people can go check that out more, and if interested, contribute to the funding of that project. And then also, I'm sure, Sean, you'll you're very receptive to people engaging and asking questions. And yeah, so I mean, like you said, this is a unfolding space with some, really uh, really worrisome possibilities going forward. And it's only been around a couple of years, I guess, but it's not going away for sure. I guess I tend to be a I subscribe to uh, you can't go backwards. You can't put the genie back in the bottle on
That's what I've
this.
been saying. That's exactly what I've been saying.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
With this
So
one, yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
right, and I bring this up occasionally, but I think it's fitting to mention it again. The one of the godfathers of IPA, the Information Professionals Association, Dr. Rand Waltzman. And I know you know him as well, Sean, but he said something that I have just always held on to, is that these kinds of problems, they're like a chronic disease. So there's no cure, but it can be managed. And so I think maybe an overarching project here is figuring out how does this get managed
Absolutely.
in a way so that you know global societies are continue to be productive and maybe even more productive with AI and everything. But all of this stuff is kind of coming along for the ride. And how do you manage it so that things don't go skittering off into the ditch?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and with that, Dr. Sean Gill, any final comment after all that, Sean?
I encourage anybody who's interested in the space, and again, just for kind of scale, I just want to leave with kind of one analogy. At least me and you, John, we remember a time when the internet was around, but it wasn't assumed to have everything on it. We knew it had stuff missing. The internet's now to the point where if folks encounter something in real life right in front of them, if they can't find it with a search, or they take a picture and they can't find it with a search, they're more skeptical of that real life object in front of them than being skeptical of the internet, because the internet's assumed to have everything on it. The internet is essentially swallowed reality. And if these prediction market folks, quoting the Kalshi CEO, who wants to financialize everything, if they have their way the same way that the internet kind of swallowed reality, they would want these prediction markets to swallow reality too. So that's where we're headed without guardrails, speed bumps, which I don't think there's many that we're going to see for the next few years. But it doesn't mean that we're helpless. So folks who want, see the importance of this and want to deal with it, find ways to mitigate it. I'm not saying I know everything, but we'll be as helpful as we can on that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, not to be silly about it, but it's like the entry way to the Matrix or something.
It's one way to put it.
I mean, I mean, that's a pretty.
It's a layer that kind of covers us all in the same sort of way.
I mean, you can interpret that in a silly way, but I don't mean it to be a silly thing. Anyway, all right. Well, all right. With that, Dr. Sean Guillory, thank you so much for being a guest on the Cognitive Crucible, and to be continued.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.